Okay, now today with the Library Codelab team, with our partners Queen City Bytes, we will be providing the program Choose Your Quest, a guide to front-end, back-end, or full-stack development with our new friend Talib Abdul-Hakeem, who is also a partner with Queen City Bytes. So again, we welcome our fantastic speaker today, and we can't wait to get started. Now, in case you have any trouble with Zoom, here are your features. You have the microphone here for muting. You have the little camera here. Your bar might be at the top of your screen, on the side, or at the bottom, depending upon your device. That is how you start and stop your video. Your participants button is about 2 buttons over in the middle. And that's so that you will see how many of us are here with you to enjoy this program. The chat is also down there next to your participants. So at any time, please, we will be watching the chat and we will do our best to quickly answer your questions. And we have also allowed the live transcript, as I stated, so that you can see all the verbiage, and this will also be provided for you after the program has ceased. Now, depending upon if you're using a Windows computer, Alt-Tab will help you switch between the open tabs. Control-Alt-Tab, you can use your arrow keys so that you can select whichever app you need to enter. The Windows logo key plus the left or right arrow will help you arrange your windows side by side as well. If you are using a Mac, one of my favorite tools, the Command tab will work as it does with the Windows keyboard for those options for you to choose whichever window needs to be open. And we also have a link there if you need to use it for any other maps, okay? Any apps you need, we will try to make those happen for you. Now, let us turn it over to Christina and Talib so that we can hear how we choose your quest, a guide to front end, back end, or full stack development. And again, thank you all for attending. And thank you to Christina and especially Talib for being our speaker today. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of them. And I hope you guys are ready for a fantastic program.
Thanks, La. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This is awesome that we are able to, again, just continue hosting these partnerships with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. Super excited for y'all to hear Talib speak today. I'm just going to pass it straight off to Talib. He's got a presentation for us in terms of choosing your path. Feel free to post questions in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, we'll go ahead and let Talib know that way. So without further ado, I will pass it off to you.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? So I'm just going to jump right into it and get started. I'm sharing my screen. So let's start the slideshow. Well, if it goes back to the beginning. There we go. So I'm just starting here. Let me move this out the way. I know this side of the screen. And I'm just going to start off with an introduction here, but basically this is going to be about like starting your path as a developer. And there's multiple routes that you can go, and we're just going to kind of go through each section here and name the best way to go about that situation and the drawbacks and positives within those journeys. So let's go. Just a quick introduction. I am a senior software engineer currently transitioning over to Palo Alto Networks. I'll be starting that on August 29th. I've been programming professionally since 2016. So February 2016 was my first job. And I went through this self-learning online resource route when I was learning. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing, just in general, before you're getting started into this journey, you need to have the proper mindset. And the mindset of a programmer, I think in general, is a good mindset, is there's always an answer when it comes to solving problems, especially within technology. Like there's a way to come to an answer. In your mindset, you want it to be in a problem solving mode. So always, hey, how can I solve this problem? Not necessarily, hey, there's something wrong here. Just like a positive like problem solving mode is a great mindset to be in. Learning how to Google is going to be your best friend. Like Googling and learning through that, learning through the avenue is great. Previously, people had to use books or individuals and everything else, but we have just a plethora like right in front of us, just a search engine that pretty much will get you to pretty much every answer that you need when it comes to learning, especially starting out learning. Like you get into problems where they get a little bit harder and it's hard to find those answers, but initially starting out and even up to mid-level to senior level. Also, the computer is most likely not wrong if you did something wrong. So it's usually you did something in terms of like when you're programming and you have to find that particular problem of what it is. And there's no need to get mad at the particular programming language or whatever you're trying to work through. You're telling the computer what to do. The computer is just making decisions based off what you're telling it. So just have the mindset that the computer is not wrong. You just have to find the problem when you're going about this. So let's go next here. So let's start with front end. That's actually where I started initially when I was doing the self-learning route. And where you're going to start out is there's three basic building blocks to like a website, and that you're going to use to build a website. And it is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I just like to keep this simple just initially because a lot of people aren't going to know like an in-depth idea of like what these things are, but just think of HTML as like the structure of a house, I guess, kind of like the studs, electrical, plumbing, and things of that nature. CSS is more so like the house decor, painting, and just things to like pretty it up. It does have some behavioral things, but it's most likely going to be more around like the decor and like just that visualization piece that's like nice to the eyes. And then JavaScript, think of that about like an action that's taking place. So imagine I go turn on a light switch. If I turn on a light switch and the electricity flows through and it turns on a light bulb. So that behavior type thing is kind of that would be like the JavaScript aspect to like a website. Like say you push a button and then something happens on a web page, most likely you're using JavaScript to do something like that. And let's go to the next piece here. So honestly, in terms of learning front end, you want to take the time out to really understand like the HTML and CSS part of it. And once you get like a good grasp on those things, going into JavaScript, that's going to be your hardest piece, honestly. Like when you get into like the behavioral type of things within the website, it's just a different type of mindset of what you're doing. So you just taking the time out to really understand like what you're doing piece by piece is, I feel like, pretty important. And I'm going to reiterate this as I'm going along. Building whatever you're doing as you're going through your self-learning journey or working with these online resources is super important. So let's say you're following a tutorial and you're building something. Make sure you build your own thing alongside that and understand like what you're doing instead of just copying and pasting. Like building that thing out is super important. So build is the going to be a big just a big talking point throughout this presentation. So let's go to the next piece. This is the simplest like breakdown of getting started. So what's next? So you want to go into a more in-depth understanding of JavaScript, and this is kind of interesting. You can go far, I think, between like associate and mid-level as like a front end type of developer without really getting in depth into like under like advanced algorithms and data structures and advanced topics. But the quicker you know those things and learn those things, it's going to make it a lot easier on you moving forward when you're just developing in the language. Because as you're going along, you're less likely going to have to Google something, and you can just type in what you're thinking based off the concepts that you already know. So it just allows you to become a better developer if you're learning the different type of data structures. And I would like to give a better description of like data structures. So imagine you have you're going to paint a house, right? To paint a house, like when I'm going along the edges of a window, there's multiple tools that I can use to go along that edge. But the most efficient one is probably a smaller paintbrush that has like an angle so you can go and not paint everything at one time. A roller would be too big for it. And a roller would be too big, and a sprayer, unless you like made the prep beforehand, you're going to spray over everything. But having an exact tool for the job is what the data structures is kind of like that thought processes. There's different tools that you can use when you're programming, and picking the right one is going to make your code a lot better and get your stuff a lot more efficient. So after that, you're getting like really in-depth knowledge within JavaScript. I would say you would go into a front-end framework. And a lot of employers and jobs nowadays, they're building stuff within front-end frameworks. And I think probably the top one would be React. And I recommend always going for like the top language or whatever is available within that market, so you're making yourself marketable. And React actually is if you learn JavaScript like really in depth before learning React, it's really good because you can go in and kind of understand what's going on. But there still is going to be like different concepts that you're going to have to learn, because React does things in certain ways, and whenever you're going into something new, there's just things around that thing that you're going to need to be learning. So what React solves for building websites, it gives you the ability to do a lot of like action type of things on the website and have your code be like structured. Imagine just putting a lot of things together. So like let's say you're wiring stuff together, and you just have this big blob of wire and you don't know where things are going, right? That can get pretty messy. And when you're working in JavaScript and doing a lot of actions within the like behaviors on a website, it can get pretty messy if you don't know how to structure that code. What React and these front-end frameworks try to solve is they give you more of a structured approach when doing those things, so that way you have reusable types of items that you can use in different places. And that way it's you're more compartmentalized together. Compartmentalized, I have a hard time with that word. And it allows you to use that thing over and over without being like jumbled and having to think about that architecture. Or it gives you kind of like an architecture that you can kind of follow, and you can write a lot better code with less code, I guess. So the next thing after this is Sass. Depending on where you go, some people use CSS, some companies use Sass. But the good thing about this is it gives you like behavior within like your styling, and I guess it gives you like more of a JavaScript type of feel within your CSS there. It's kind of hard to just explain off the back, but it just it makes working within styling a lot easier, where you don't have to do repeatable things. You can kind of like build things to do repeating type of stuff for you, and other things of that nature. So let's go to the next slide. So what's beyond next? You can just go, honestly, you can go like really in depth into a lot of different areas after you get those building blocks down. And Gulp, Webpack, they're like tools that are associated with like working with SaaS, which I previously talked about. And basically what it does is it takes that that document that you build and it spits out like a document of CSS. So making it to where it's readable for the computer. And also same thing with like, you're always trying to get efficiencies out of your code and things like that. And Gulp allows you to possibly like this thing called like minification, where it takes all the spaces out of your code. And the spaces, honestly, they take up memory. So if you're able to get spaces out of your code should run quicker and more efficiently. So the command line, I feel like, is pretty cool to know, and it makes your development life a lot easier. Initially, when I was learning the code, I would stay out of the command line. It just kind of scared me a lot. But basically, you can do a lot of cool things within the command line, and I won't go too in depth into that. And there's other stuff like Docker and things like that. And just learning just never ends, honestly. But I would say super important as you're going along, make sure you're building as you're going along, and also make sure you get those building blocks before you keep moving on. So next here, I just want to do a quick time check. Where we at? Cool. So we're 20 minutes. So like I said, the theme of this talk is build, build, build. So a good thing to start out with, honestly, is building a portfolio website. And I would say, when you're first learning, don't try to come up with something new. Always like take something that you see and try to build it with code as you see it. I'm not saying just copy and paste, but just kind of like look at what the website looks like, then try to like type it out in the code. This will make it a lot easier for you to not think about, oh, I have to come up with something new. And this is what I would tell myself previously when I was first learning code. Instead of like taking all the time out to try to plan and everything else, just start coding, start building. And a good thing is a portfolio website. And also that's like self-documenting, and you can show that right away. So build a website that you see all the time that you like going to. Like I said, I put it on here, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, and honestly, anything else. Build a quiz game, find a quiz game online, see how it works, and then just kind of try to replicate that in code. Look at a grade book, just different things that you see within the browser. They're like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Try to build that thing. And it just builds up the memory, your muscle memory, and just like grinding through learning how to code is going to be your best friend. It allows you to just keep that stays with you longer, and it just builds up that repetition. And when you go through something hard and then you get through that thing, and on the other side, like light bulbs start popping out. So it just gives you the ability to just keep have that in the back of your mind now, and you don't really have to go over it too much more. So next, I'm going to be providing a full resource list here. This isn't the full resource list, but basically, I wanted to give in this talk, give you the ability to have like a free resource and a paid resource for each of these things that I'm talking about, right? So I'm just going to pull this up here. Let's see here. So like I said, I have a full resource list here that I'm going to be sending out after the talk. And basically, you should invest in yourself. Honestly, that's what I did. The Udemy courses were really like good for me. I followed this HTML CSS course. And when I followed it, I built my own website on the side. And honestly, it like changed my view of like how a website should look, and I didn't have to create it on my own. And then I kind of like change up little things here and there. And they have a lot of free resources too as well. But there's just a ton of resources out there, and I just wanted to be more focused with this thing. So like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a deeper understanding to JavaScript, React, and then other stuff that I think will be really good to pair, and then just YouTube channels to follow that are out there, right? So I'm going to go back here. So next here, let's do it. All right, let's go to the backend now. So the backend is where I'm leaning a lot toward. I've been leaning more towards lately, and I just like that side of programming more. So if I was to start a backend engineering journey right now, I would say start with Python and just stick to that. And the reason I say that is when you're first learning, you're trying to look at all these resources, you're thinking, oh, hey, what about Java? What about this? What about that? You don't have like a path that just follow, and you're kind of like trying to go everywhere. But pick a programming language and just go with it. Don't change. I would say Python would be the best one personally, I think. And I would say the next best one would be Node.js. And we'll get into more Node.js on the full stack path. But in terms of like, if you're just going to do backend engineering, I would say Python. Alrighty. So let's go to the next piece here. And with Python, sorry, I didn't change the slide up, but with Python, super important, especially as a backend engineer, learning data structures and algorithms is going to be really key for you. Not just in coding interviews, but becoming a better developer. It just goes hand in hand with being able to be a more productive engineer and really have a deep understanding of the language. So really dive deep into Python and don't switch until you understand programming concepts. Once you understand programming concepts, then you can start switching over into other languages, and it becomes a lot easier because you have the concepts down of what in terms of like different paradigms and stuff. And it just allows you to understand what's going on in somewhere else, and you're just more learning like the syntax of the language and how it speaks. So after that, learning a database technology, I feel like is super important, especially if you're working in a backend language, you're usually going to be working with a database. So personally, I think Postgres SQL is really good for pairing with Python. But there's other types of databases out there. But this is just like a simple take where I feel like, hey, this is the best SQL database technology to learn. And just focusing on that, because honestly, once you learn one database technology, you'll be able to take those same concepts across other database technology with the same thing. But in-depth Python database and command line is going to be important if you're a backend engineer. I don't shy away from the command line at all. And I put Linux based here because a lot of stuff that you're working in is Linux based. I know people have different types of computers with Windows and Macs and different things of that nature. The good thing about a Mac is you already have like a Linux based type of command line utility on the computer. But when you have a Windows, you're going to have to like download other softwares. I think they might have something on there now, but it's just I started on a Windows and I just had to download those softwares, and it just takes time to kind of like configure it to make sure you're able to talk to other computers and things like that. So let's go next here. So beyond next, so within Python, you have the idea of just different frameworks and things and packages and stuff that you can use. And I think personally, I like a couple of them. I think Django is probably the best one in terms of like marketability of your skills in the job market. Fast API is one that I've been working in a lot more lately, and it's a quick rate web framework to get up and running. And there's a lot of other things, honestly. So like I said, like when you're learning programming, you're going to be learning all the time. But I like that. I like the idea of being able to learn and just keep getting better and better and keep pushing myself. So I'm going to go to the next thing. And we remember the theme of the talk is build, 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 right? So building projects within backend engineering. I think the number one thing to build would be like it's this idea called like a REST API. And basically you're going to be pairing your programming language with a database, and you're going to be building a set of like functions that do different things on the database. So you know how in Excel you're able to create columns, update columns, read columns, and delete different columns. So it's that same type of ability, but you're building that within a programming language. And this is used everywhere. Like anywhere I've been, there's a REST API of some sort. It's going to be maybe more advanced in terms of like what it's doing, but these are like the simple bare bones of like creating that type of functionality. So one thing that I built on my first job is I built the system that read a Google Sheet, and then I converted that into a certain type of document that was needed within our company. And that's they have abilities to you have the ability to do that within Python. There's this idea that you can connect through different systems if the system is open to that, right? So you can take an image on your computer. Currently, I have a side project where I'm like taking images and I'm resizing it and giving it a different background color. There's libraries in Python that allow you to do that. But there's just so many ideas out there that you can do, like where you do like manually. Like if I open an image in Paint, resize it, create a new background color, try to do that in Python, just things that you're doing on your computer and on everyday basis. Try to write out a text document using Python. There's just things to kind of like get yourself going, just starting, and always build, always look to build. So when you're looking at these like resources, right? Like I said, hey, I have these resources that I'm going to give more resources to for like the backend engineering path, and as well too. Like I said, I have like a full document here for backend as well, and just a lot more in depth within Python. Like you have this getting started initially, like a deeper understanding of Python, then Postgres, Linux, Git, Docker, then recommended YouTube channels in this concept. This is one I was talking about earlier about like building a create, read, update, delete type of thing, and then more in depth into that. And you can go more and more. And I just wanted to actually add some overview videos of like what backend engineering is, just to give you a better idea out there. So after backend engineering, we have this idea of full stack, and full stack is kind of funny. It's hard, honestly, just independently, both front-end engineering and back-end engineering, they're kind of like a hard thing to master. So when you're doing full stack, you're kind of like spreading your brain between both of them, right? And you're trying to do them somewhat okay. So like me, I have experience both front-end and back-end. I can do them efficiently, but I want to get you just have to take more time to become proficient in this aspect. So let's say you're going to do a full stack path. I would say, I just said, hey, Python, if I was going to go back in, I would do Python. But if I'm going to do full stack, I would stick within the JavaScript, just that JavaScript framework, and do Node.js. And the backend technology you can pick. We have MongoDB here. There's Postgres, MySQL. Pick one though. Don't try to do a lot. Just do one. And the reason I say Node.js for full stack is because you're already doing front end and you're doing JavaScript. So just gaining an understanding and a deeper knowledge within JavaScript and having that be down your full application is just going to be easier for you. And you're going to be able to just concentrate on the language because you're already having to do HTML, CSS plus JavaScript within the on the website side, which is different than JavaScript. Well, it's you're doing different things within JavaScript on the server side compared to the client side. So you already have all these different things. So I don't want the language to be a blocker for you when doing these things. So Node.js would be a really good thing to pair with your front end if you're doing JavaScript on the front end, right? But once you get really good within JavaScript on the server side, you can switch to a different programming language on the back end, like I said. But initially, I would say stick to Node.js and a database technology that you pick one. And also on the front end, you have your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then, your front end framework, which would be like React. I would pick React. There's other ones out there, but for this sake, I just want to focus on like the top technology in terms of like popularity and resources. So let's see here. This is just tools that are available within your while you're programming. And my code editor of choice is VS Code. There's other ones out there. I would say pick VS Code, stick with it. And then if you want to switch over after you like get where you start getting like preferences with what you want to work in, then you can then switch over. But I would say if you just starting out, pick VS Code, stick with it, and because it's a really good tool. They have this idea of like version control for your code, right? And basically it's just a saving mechanism. So you and saving mechanism at different points. So that way you can go back to different versions of your code previously. And this is just something that's used in every industry when it comes to programming. It's just inherent, like, hey, Git versioning, GitHub, it goes along with what you're doing. So you might not necessarily be using GitHub. There's other tech tools out there, services out there that do that work with version control. But this is really core to when you're learning is doing Git and then being able to use GitHub in the cloud. And then Docker is containerization. And this is something I put on here because honestly, anywhere I've been now professionally, companies are using Docker. And I would say don't really worry about Docker until you get a really good grasp on everything else. Because it's just going to throws a kind of like a wrench into like what you're trying to do. And you don't need a super deep understanding of Docker, just kind of more of a high level and being able to like use that in its capacity of like spinning up applications and stuff. Let's see here. So thank you. This is my end of my presentation, and just having, I'm going to go back to the beginning of this talk, is just the mindset that you have if you're starting to learn. Just know that it's going to be hard. It's not easy, but consistency and discipline is like the best things you can do, as well as being able to reach out to your communities. I'm just going to go and talk a little about my initial self-learning and just that initial thing. What I was doing is I was building my portfolio website. I also was reaching out on a lot of different meetups, people in there who had knowledge, and as well as just using my network of people. Don't try to don't stay on a thing if it's taking you like weeks to do, like a couple of days to do, like try to reach out to someone because you're like taking that grind and really learning. But you don't want something that's just going to block you for days upon days. Even like in a professional setting, if I have someone that I know, hey, they're really good within this respect, I'm going to reach out to them if I'm getting stuck, to kind of like give me a path forward. So really take that understanding that you're learning in a network. You're not by yourself siloed somewhere else. Like a lot of people have more knowledge than you, and a lot of people are willing to help. Use your network and community when you're learning. I was reaching out to recruiters about my portfolio website and what do they think I need to improve to actually like get interviews and get a job, and just different people I was just reaching out to all the time. Okay, I am going to stop there and hopefully open it up for questions.
Yeah, it looks like Daniel has their hand up.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What's a good project to start with to build a portfolio?
So a good project to start with to build a portfolio, I would say is, like I said, pick a website. So I'm going to bring something up. Actually, let me share. I just stopped sharing, but let me share for a second here. I just said pick something and look at a reference and then just build that out and put your kind of like different colors and twist on it. So I'm going to go front end here. Just keep building. Let me think here. Let's do this. So you have this guy's website here, right? I would take this and just start building this within HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And I would just, I would start with the bare bones because you can like disable JavaScript on this thing and see how it looks with just HTML and CSS, right? And I would go and build this page per page exactly how it looks. Afterwards, I would change it out, but I would just take this and build it, honestly. I wouldn't do maybe not all the fancy functionalities that he has there. I would just do a simple where you can go from page to page and try to get it to look exactly like this. And this is my portfolio website from, I built this in 2016 when I first started. So I haven't updated it at all. And yeah, so I copied the Udemy course like as I was going along, and then I saw other portfolio websites and I incorporated those into my website. So that's I feel like that's the best way to go.
Thank you. And Sylvia asked, I wanted to get your feedback on W3 School's website as a learning resource. If you're familiar with it, do you think it has up-to-date information provided?
It does. It's a good learning resource. When I'm Googling something real quickly about HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, it's really good just overall, just being able to use it as a resource. But there's if you're able to like see visual, like have a good teacher, like especially within the tutorials, which was good for me, is I had someone being able to explain what these things are within this structure of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And as I'm going along and building it, it's sometimes you have questions when you're looking at these things. So I would either reach out to your network or like I like using the Udemy course that I'm going to send out, which gives you like more in-depth description of what you're going through.
Thank you. And Vanessa asked, I'm already in tech as a QA tester / test lead. Where would you recommend me to start if I would want to incorporate coding to enhance what I know as a tester?
I got you. So in terms of testing, are you testing the front end or the back end is my follow-up question. And okay, let's say if you're testing the front end, I would incorporate JavaScript, depending if you want to go down this path. I would incorporate just an in-depth knowledge of JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Like you're going to be able to build the things you're testing at that point, right? So you've tested databases, UIs, apps, and everything. Okay, cool. So where do you see yourself leaning to, have you touched any technologies yet at all in terms of like development, Vanessa?
No, not really.
Okay.
But my I know you mentioned about Python, but my
Yes.
interest is in Python right now because that's what I've been hearing in the tech world lately. That it's
Yeah.
really a good
Uh,
language.
Definitely. I would say you're already testing databases, right? I think you will have an understanding of like just the structure of like how things are when you're going through and like learning. Honestly, like I said, if I was starting out right now, I would just go into Python and just go really deep into understanding, like learning that programming language, and then you're learning your programming concepts alongside that. And I will definitely like send out resources that are will hopefully get you up to speed quicker for that.
I have a question for someone who maybe doesn't want to go into programming,
Mhm.
but still wants to learn more about it. Do you think it's useful for them, say if they still wanted to be in the tech field, such as a product manager, do you think it's useful that they learn to code, or should they not worry about it?
If you're a technical project manager, it always helps. Like I've seen people who are able to transition really well into a technical project manager because they know how to code, right? They can just they can just learn they just have that vernacular and being able to talk to the developers and understand like where they're coming from. So I think at least like a high level, like not necessarily being able to code really well, but just like a high level understanding of programming is good.
Thank you. Okay, are there any more questions for Talib? Ida.
Yes. A quick question. I'm like trying to find a career change. I was in the medical field for 10 years as a medical receptionist. And I was wondering, like, what do you, where would you recommend for me to do a course? Because I'm a visual learner.
Yep.
And what would you recommend? And I'm also money-wise, I'm short with money. And I've seen some courses are kind of expensive. And what do you recommend?
Yeah,
And
definitely.
thank you.
So I have, like I said, I'm going to be sending out resources afterwards, and they're going to be visual courses. They're going to contain both a paid version and a free version that you can go through for each piece there. So that's what I would recommend, honestly, is going through the free versions there and getting, if you feel like that's good enough for you, keep going through those free versions. If you feel like, hey, I want more, just the paid content on some of the courses is better, but you can still get you can get most of it out of the free version. So I would say you don't have to go that route until you really need to. When I was learning, I paid for, I think, two courses that were $10 a piece. And I would say this: whenever I'm paying for a course, I don't pay more than $10 or $15, and they always go on sale for the website that I use called Udemy. There's also free content on other places like Coursera, which is an edX, and these are just content available that are like really high quality courses from like universities. They just go like super in depth into the subject matter, where sometimes I guess you don't need that depth, and you can like kind of skip around and kind of go into specifically exactly what you want to know. Also lynda.com, if you have a library card, you can get, I think it's LinkedIn Learning or lynda.com. You can get a free subscription, which is cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well,
We appreciate the plug.
Any other questions? These have been all wonderful. All right, looks like that wraps it up for today. Talib, thank you again so much for your time and being able to answer all these questions. The resource that you'll be providing afterwards, again, is invaluable. So thank you so much for doing that. We'll go ahead and share that through the library, through the meetup as well. And then another great resource is Charlotte Dev. So if you haven't checked out Charlotte Devs, go to charlottedevs.com. I'll go ahead and post it in the chat. There's a login area to Slack. So if you are just starting off as a developer, there are a ton of developers in that Slack group. That's how I reached out to Talib to give us this talk today. So I highly recommend you all find mentors through that opportunity, and really, really just ask questions and get involved through networking virtually through that group. So I'll pass it off to La as well for any closing comments.
Thank you all again for attending our wonderful program. I don't know if I can, beat what Talib and Christina had to say, but for us, if you would please make a note of the link that we just posted in the chat, and that is so that you fill out our survey and add feedback to what else you would like the library and our partners with Queen City Bytes for us to provide for you for free. As Talib mentioned earlier, Coursera is a very great resource. For the most part, it is free. There are times that they can provide funding for you if the course is not free. So I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. And thank you all once again on behalf of Queen City Bytes, that would be Talib and Christina, and on behalf of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Library Codelab team. We really appreciate the fact that you all take time to attend our programming, and we truly hope you come again. And hopefully soon we will have more in-person programming relative to digital inclusion content. And we hope Christina and Talib might pop in for such an invitation. Thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you, La and
Thank you.
Talib and Christina.